Hey, come through, just you or your crew. I just want to tell you about some news you could use with the All Black Matters Pod. Hey guys, welcome back to a brand new episode of the All Black Matters podcast. I'm your host, Rivka. You know how we get down over here. We talk about all things Black related, culture, everything you can think of under the sun. And today we have episode number 2 of the Culture Convos segment of this podcast. I sat down with a friend of mine named Patricia, and I just wanted to talk about the Afro Latinx. I'm sorry, I think I said that kind of weird. The Afro Latinx community and this movement that's going on that some of us are just hearing about, some of us are not new to, and I just want to talk about that. And she is one of the advocates for that community, and I thought it'd be really interesting to sit down and have a conversation with her. So that is what you guys will be experiencing today. Okay, guys, so before I get into this episode, I got to tell you guys about this amazing app that I found for podcasters. If you are interested in podcasting, never had a podcast before, know nothing about podcasting, I'm telling you, you want to download this app. It's called the Anchor app. Now, the Anchor app has literally everything you could ever need to build your podcast for absolutely $0. I am not joking. It's literally what I use to record my podcast every week. If you are at all interested in getting into the game, you want resources, you want to be able to record with friends, you want to be able to have all the things that you need basically as a starter kit, you want to download this app. Just go to anchor.fm and get started. Guys, you're going to thank me later, I'm telling you. Now, Patricia's an old friend of mine. She is also a teacher in the tri-state area. She's also an advocate, as previously mentioned, for the Afro Latinx community, something that she's super passionate about. She talks a lot about it on her YouTube channel, Patricia FIG, which is her last name, first name, last name. If you're looking up YouTubers, you can definitely find her there. I suggest checking her out, subscribing, all that good stuff, and you can hear a lot more of what you're going to hear today. Hey, Patricia, how are you?
I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm good. So I want to welcome you to the All Black Matters podcast. I just want to kind of talk to you. I wanted to talk to you actually because I mentioned to you before that I saw a couple of videos of your just the way that you are about being proud, about being Afro-Latina. And I just thought it would be an interesting point to have a conversation about it. And this point that you are right now, do you think you've always been this way? Or how do you think that you developed the kind of identity that you have today?
Growing up in Harlem, where I was split between the Latino population and the African American population, and feeling like, well, I am Black, but I'm not Black, because I don't have the same experience or as the African Americans in my school. I'm always with the Latinos, my language, my culture, and all these things. But I always felt like I was too Black for one group, but then not Black enough for the other. It was just in that rejection from both circles that I kind of just was like, this is what I am. I'm just a Black Latina, and I'm not going to try to fit into either or try to force myself into circles. Like, this is who I am, and I'm just going to be apologetically that.
So I was interested in knowing if Patricia always kind of knew about what Afro-Latina meant and if she had the language for it or if that was something that she learned later on in life.
So like the term Afro-Latina, that's something that I started embracing, I would say, like 5-6 years ago, but the identity or the experience or the understanding came way before that. I think to be able to articulate it as I could do so now, that came with, learning more of my history, that came more with communicating with other people who have experienced everything I've experienced. But knowing that I was a Black Latina and knowing that I was Black in general, that's always been something that I've embraced. And what's crazy? I've never been ashamed of it, even though I've always basically been told to be ashamed of it. Like, I never recall, like, damn, I wish I was light skinned, or I wish my hair was like this, or I wish that. It was always just like, this is what I am. Have I always felt as proud as I do now? Perhaps no, because my actions didn't prove that. You know what I'm saying? But like, I never felt ashamed of being Black as I was supposed to, as I was told to.
This got me thinking, what was Patricia's childhood like if she never felt ashamed to be all of herself?
I have two sisters who they're both, you know, Black women, but they have different features. Like my sister has finer hair, more of like an Indian look to her, right? Yeah. So that in and of itself gave her, you know, certain privilege or a different outlook than I would, because my hair, which hair is such a determinant of one's race, right? My hair showed more of my Black features, right? So there was always like an understanding in me that my sister and I were different. Right, because even the hairstyles that she would be able to do, or the praise she would get that I wouldn't, or you know, I'll get the comments like, you know, come on, gotta fix this hair. You want to look good, fix this. You know, things like reinforcing, you know, that you are Blacker, or you have more Black, more of a Black phenotype that you should be ashamed of, or you should fix, you should perm, you should whatever. It's just little things that as a child you remember, that you realize. And I think once you find the words to articulate, you know, you just look back and it's just like, yeah, that's always been there. And I've always dealt with this.
Now, the next part of this conversation I thought was just worth the highlight.
My family always jokes with me and they'll be like, tú con tus rutas. And that means like you and your roots, because I will always tell my grandma, I love my roots. Like, I'm Black. Like, I was just like, I will always joke like that since I was little. Like, it's crazy how like, I always think about it. Like, why wasn't I ashamed? Like, why didn't I let it get to me to the point where I hated, you know, being Black so much? Instead, I would make jokes of it and like embrace it on purpose.
You mentioned a lot about it being something that you were made aware of by like your family and people that were like, you know, a part of your culture. But as far as like making friends outside of that, because you mentioned growing up in Harlem, where I would imagine is quite diverse, but I grew up in Brooklyn, so it might have been a little bit, you know, some differences.
A little different.
So how was that?
So it was definitely interesting because, like I said, in the Latino circle, because you have the Spanish kids, that's what we refer to it at the hood, you know, the Spanish kids, and then you got the Black kids. So with the Latino kids, with the Spanish kids, it was more so like, of course, like, you down with us, like, you know, you're Dominican, you know, like, you're definitely rolling with us. But like, it'll just be like when I'm hanging out with my friends, or when a guy is trying to talk to me, a Spanish dude is trying to, like, you know, flirt with me or whatever, like, oh, you're the prettiest dark-skinned girl. Oh, like, you're so pretty for a dark-skinned girl. You know, you're just kind of always reminded of you being Black. It's like, so it wasn't like they don't accept you. It's not like you aren't one of them, but it's just like a constant reminder that you are Black. Yeah. And, you know, also, like, I've also experienced where, like, girls my age or girls that were in my circles, they would automatically feel that they were better than me, or they wouldn't understand why a guy would like me over them, because they're light skinned, like, she's dark skinned. You know what I'm saying? Like, why do you like her? So I definitely experienced that.
How did you, like, I guess, deal with it then in that sense? Like, so you're noticing those things even like as a young girl growing up in school, like you're seeing these little microaggressions and different things, ways that you're treated differently than your like other Latino friends or Latina friends. So how did you, I guess, I don't want to say retaliate, but
I would acknowledge it, and I would notice, like I remember this one particular night, like, I'll never forget, because the guy was just like, we were like in a little, like, you know, high school party, or, you know, and like he meant it so genuine, like, you are the most beautiful dark skin, like, oh my God, like, you're so pretty for a dark skinned girl, because remember, like, the idea of dark skin varies in culture. So you know, like I could be considered brown skin amongst African Americans or whatever, or in any other circle. But among Latinos, where people are mostly mixed and fairly like light, like it says, oh my God, like you're so, like you're dark skin, but like you're mad pretty. It's like, but you're mad pretty, or, you know, and I looked at him, and I'm pretty sure I thanked him or something, but I was like, wow, he really has me effed up. Like, he thinks that he is complimenting me. He's genuinely trying to compliment me. I think I was passive about it. I didn't address it as I would now, you know, and I think it was a buildup of all of those things that that led to just me speaking out so much about it now. You know? And you had asked about like just growing up in Harlem. So I spoke to you about like the Spanish side, like, you know, dealing with the Hispanics. But then with the African Americans, it was a different experience, because I was always still considered a Spanish girl. So there was always still that boundary. You know what I mean? Like, she's Spanish, like she's not one of us. That's one thing. Or your last name is Figueroa, you're not Spanish. Look at your baby hair, look at your hair, or it curls different, or whatever. You have an accent, or you whatever. You know, like there was always like a distinguishment between me and them. And then guys will fetishize me just for being Latina. You know what I'm saying? Like, I was better than the African American girls. They might look better than me, perhaps, or whatever that may be. But because I was Spanish, I was different, and they wanted me.
Does that remind you of anything? In the last culture combo that I had with Bianca, there was a similar thread. So I thought it was really interesting that this topic kind of resurfaced with Patricia, and her thoughts on it were interesting as well. I remember growing up in Brooklyn, that was what I kind of experienced, because for me, when I went to high school in Williamsburg, and it's kind of like borderline Bushwick, borderline Williamsburg. So there was a lot of Hispanic people that went to the school I went to. There was a lot of Black kids and a lot of Hispanic kids. And I remember acknowledging that, like, I saw like all the Spanish girls were Black guys, and I'm like, but they would prefer them over us. It was a subtle way of me feeling like, damn, like, so they don't even want us. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know if that makes sense. But if my hair was straighter, it was like, oh, like, okay, she's like Black, but she has like straight hair. Like, you got to be mixed with something. Or it was that thing of I had to deal with the Spanish girls kind of feeling like they were better than us, or like acting like they were better than us.
You know, we often think of like racism, right? Like dealing with Blacks and whites. But then like there's so many like intracultural racism that we deal with. Like, I was in the middle of that. Like, I was in the middle of being a Spanish girl, but being the Black Spanish girl. You get what I'm saying? So I was still a part of the crew that had kind of like a superiority complex, and it's subtle. I don't think like they're walking around really like, oh, I'm better, but it's like, you know that you're better because society tells you you're better. Sadly, like, I could only imagine what you dealt with. And I can't sit here and say that I haven't dealt with privilege for being Latina myself. You know, it looks different than a light-skinned Latina's privilege, but I still have privilege. You know what I'm saying? Like, and it's something that I've never liked, because I see right through it when a guy likes me, and I know it has, you know, he's kind of like kind of like looking at me as something different, like exotifying me. I'm not sure if that's even a term, exotifying, but you know what I'm saying? Like what is it that you like so much? You know what I'm saying? Is it my accent? Is it that, you know, I'm Dominican? Is it what is it? Because I'm a Black woman regardless, you know?
Yep, that's on period.
So
what about like, I know, like, I don't know too much about this part of things, but I know that there's this like whole dynamic where Dominican and then Puerto Rican, and like, was that something that was a factor in like your development growing up, or was that something that it was just kind of like Latinos, we all just like the same kind of thing? I know you mentioned that there was a little bit of a difference when you were in that community, but I kind of want to touch on that because it's something that I heard about growing up. Like, it was kind of like there was a little bit of a war. I don't know, like something was going on there.
Well, I can't say that I experienced it, but I was very aware of it. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? Like, I didn't experience it much because in my community, in Harlem, the Dominicans prevailed. Like, it was mostly Dominicans. Yeah. So I wasn't really dealing with like Puerto Ricans. Yeah. However, I went to school 1 year in the Bronx, where there's a higher population of Puerto Ricans. And in that area, there was like Dominicans as well, but they were a smaller population. So what I did notice is that Puerto Ricans have been in this country longer. Right, so they have experienced a different America than Dominicans have, right? Because most Dominicans came in the 80s and 90s, and Puerto Ricans been here since the 40s. So they experienced Jim Crow often, right? They experienced a lot of the discrimination that African Americans did, because at that time it was like, if you're not white, you're black, that one drop rule. Right. So it's like both groups, African Americans and Puerto Ricans, were like lumped together in ghettos. And, they kind of have the same culture. So they identify with each other differently. So like even Dominicans who come into the country, to the United States, because I'm a Dominican and I've been around Dominican circles, I've heard this several times. It was like, oh, no, Puerto Ricans are just like the blacks. They're just like the blacks, like they act just like the blacks and they have the same mentality as the blacks. So there was always that friction. So like, for example, for me, when I went to school in the Bronx and I was dealing with more Puerto Ricans and stuff like that, like there was like this beef, like we're the Hicks, Dominicans are the Hicks, like we're the newcomers, we're the real like Hispanic, like foreigners, but they're down with the African Americans, or they're the cool ones, or they're the ones that have been here longer. There's always been like that type of friction.
Would you say on the Dominican side, there was this kind of like, we were a little bit higher than you because we, like that associating or I guess from
100%, because you associated with the culture. Like when any immigrant, like, a lot of people ask, like, how can a Latino be racist? A Latino can 100% be racist. Number one, they bring their own mentality from their own countries, and then when they come to this country, whatever country you migrate to or you settle in, you become aware of who's at the bottom and who's at the top.
Right, very quickly.
Exactly, and the first thing you want to do is to distinguish yourself from whoever's at the bottom.
Right.
So if Puerto Ricans act just like your stereotypical African American, and they act a certain way or they are viewed a certain way, you want to distinguish yourself, or your parents are making sure that they're telling you, don't hang out with the Cocolos and the Boricuas because they're always doing this, or blah blah. So 100%, and that's not everyone, of course.
Of course.
But I can't sit here and deny that isn't a sentiment that does exist.
Yeah, so I wanted to ask you too, like, as you got older and like now you have language and now you're kind of like starting to piece the things together. I know before you said like there were certain things that happened that you didn't necessarily address, so you probably were a little bit more passive about. Now you're like coming into your identity and you're like, okay, like this is something that I feel strongly about. Like how did that turning point change for you? Like, or what made that, what was the aha moment that you were like, you know what? No, I need to now make sure that this is something that I'm vocal about?
Wow. That's a hard question because I don't remember like a specific, like, momentous moment where I'm just like, yes, I am going to speak out on it, I would say, honestly, my hair. Let me see, I was like 18 years old when I started just letting my natural hair, grow, and I started embracing my natural hair, and I think that was major. And I think that happens to be something major for a lot of Black women. Like when we say, yo, I'm gonna rock what God has given me. And it's such a bold statement. It's like, it was definitely really hard for me in my community because it's just like, number one, I'm Dominican. And, I'm not sure if you're familiar with like how we're known to straighten the crap out of hair.
Absolutely. Remember like from my perms and my blowouts.
Wash and set.
What?
25.
Every 2 weeks I was in that salon chair like, okay.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So for me to like, say, nah, I actually don't want to go to the salon every 2 weeks or every weekend. Like, I actually want to, like, start cutting it and start embracing my natural hair. And it was just like, the what? Like, you want to do what?
Right.
Like, that's not cute. What are you doing? Like, you're going to look Black. And it's just like, okay, I don't have any problem with looking Black. I'm Black. Like, what are you talking about, Grandma? Like, you're a Black woman. Like, what?
Yeah.
So because I guess when I started embracing my natural hair, and I started to experience everything that I had experienced in micro levels or in a joking manner before, it kind of came, like, how do I explain this? It became even more intense, I would say, because now it's like I'm really showing my Black feature in my hair. So now I would get more comments, or I would get more jokes. So I felt the need to speak out more. And I felt the need to, like, defend my Black phenotype or my Black identity, or talk about the history and school people. Like, you sound dumb, actually, because we all have African ancestry or blah, blah. Yeah. So I think the hair was like the driving force, because it unveiled their own, like, racist ideology. Yeah. Because they would mention, and they would just make sly comments, and then it forced me to kind of defend myself and defend my history and defend my Black identity. And so, yeah, I think that was it. I think the hair thing did help.
I think that's amazing, because you kind of had the option to kind of, like, go with your privilege and say, you know what, like, yes, I have this Black phenotype, but I am also Latina, so I can just kind of, like, cover it with that. And for you choosing and saying, like, no, I embrace all parts of me, and if you have a problem with it, and I'm hearing you mention, like, little, stabs or so, if you want to call it that, from, like, even family members, and for you to even be able to stand up and say, you know what, even if you guys don't want to fully embrace who you are as well, I'm gonna kind of take that stand and be proud of who I am. With that privilege,
yeah, 100.
They wouldn't want to do it.
No, and thank you so much. And you're 100% right. It's like, to a certain extent, it really feels like this is how I view it from the Latino community when I vocalize what we say, or the mentality that we often have. It's kind of like I'm, like, stabbing my people in the back.
Oh wow!
Like it's like I'm uncovering, this ideology that we act as if we don't have, unfortunately, because we're so different. Latino America is so, diverse. Like, we act as if, everything's all fun and games and we all get along, and we're all just different, and we're not racist. How can we be racist? Like, we have all these colors and shades and et cetera, but the truth is, in all of those colors and shades, there's a hierarchy. There's racism, there's colorism, and then we come into this country and we propagate that even more and stuff like that. And so for me to, like you said, like, I could sit here and side with the oppressor, right? Mm-hmm. And just sit here and, like, just in subtle ways, just agree to the terms of white supremacist ideology.
Yeah.
But to speak out on it makes people uncomfortable. It's made a lot of people uncomfortable. Some of the videos that I've made, I have some of my Latino friends like, oh, I disagree with you. That's not true, blah, blah. But these are the same people who benefit from their racially ambiguous look, So I'm like, I don't want to hear it. We know it's true. If we don't want to acknowledge it, that's another thing, but it's reality.
What would you kind of respond to people that say it's like a new movement, and that is the one that kind of created this movement, and now everybody wants to kind of jump on the bandwagon? There's no such thing as Afro Latino or whatever that they just created, and now everybody wants to be benefiting from this wave of Black culture that everybody seems to be attached to.
Mm-hmm. Well, I critique on the Afro Latino movement that's happening right now. What you just said is true and false, and I'll say, I think I'll explain what I mean by that. Mm-hmm. I agree that this term has been, like, hijacked by, like, everybody now, and it's like, now it feels like it's just like a social media trend, or something that every Latino wants to embrace now, just to be down and claim Black identity. I don't know. Like, I have seen that as well. And I actually made a video on that. It's been terms that people use. I think that the Afro-Latino one is one that is being used the most in the United States.
Yeah.
And amongst the young people. But throughout the centuries, there have been so many, and there will always be Latinos who will always embrace and always have embraced that they're Black. You go to any Latino country, and there's so much African culture everywhere.
I was going to say that, like, there's a unique experience, I think, for people who live in America and how they identify to, being either Latina or Black. But when you go outside of the United States, I was gonna ask, do you know? I don't know how much you have been outside of the United States to like kind of see that what that the differences are. But
yeah, people identify more so with their nation, like they're like I'm Dominican, I'm Colombian, I'm Brazilian, etc., etc.
yeah.
And when you go to Cuba, Cuba is so rich in Black culture. When you go to Brazil, it's so rich in Black culture. There are people who identify, as Black and have identified as Black in all these places long before we've ever created the term Afro-Latino or any of that. I think the term Latina and Latino and Hispanic, that's all U.S. made. That's one thing. Yeah. So, like, outside of the U.S., Afro-Latino or Afro-Latina, people are like, the what? You're what? Like... That's all foreign to most people. My socioeconomic status are sometimes the lowest, or they're the most neglected by their and it's crazy. It's like every Latino country has a group of people that they're Afro descendants, that they know that they're Afro descendants. They preserve their culture, whether that be through religion, whether that be through the foods that they eat. And unfortunately, in every country, those people tend to be government and stuff like that. Yeah. I was in Costa Rica 2 years ago now, and I was learning about the Afro Costarricenses. They usually live in places like Limon, and it's like outside of the city center. Mm-hmm. And they're, high poverty rates, crime, the whole story that you see with Black people anywhere. And it's that hierarchy that we talk about. So like I hate when, cause I've also dealt here in this country with African Americans trying to tell us like, we're not Black, or, kind of like denying our Black experience just because it doesn't fit their experience. Yeah. I'm sorry, like, I know that my grandmother is not from the South, yeah, my great-great-grandparents weren't picking cotton, but they were in the sugar plantations, right. So it's just like our history looks a little different, but it's the same,
yeah.
So.
It's just like that experience is like something that a lot of people that have that can identify with, even if it's whether you come from America or a different Caribbean island or wherever you come from that isn't from America. I think that's a common experience that you can kind of, you know what I mean? Like a shared kind of.
Yeah, 100%.
So it's that even having that divide with some of us, because I know even in the Black community, we do that sometimes, like having a conversation with someone else earlier, within Caribbean culture, it's like, you used to try to distinguish like, okay, but are you really this person or are you really from this place? And if you're from here, like you should know this. And like, oh, I'm Trinidadian, I'm not Jamaican, or you know what I mean? Just even those little subtleties where it's like, I don't know, within our own community, we still have that issue of kind of trying to just be one and understand that even though there are some differences and, nuances that make us unique, I mean, a lot of the experiences are similar.
100%, yeah.
Yeah. To close out the conversation, I was really interested in knowing what Patricia had done either in the past or today to further educate people on what it meant to be Afro-Latinx.
I actually run a natural hair club in the high school that I work in. So in the club, we do different things. I teach the girls, the science behind Black hair, just trying to like teach them about like hair porosity or different protective styles. And sometimes we talk about just the struggles of our hair or what we dealt with in our community with being Black, or, we just share all of our experiences. Sometimes we write poems, sometimes we read poems, and it's just like a safe space for our girls. And I've had boys as well. Sometimes they just want to be nosy and be with the girls or whatever. But they come, and it's just a place where our girls can feel free to just be, and have a place where they can talk about whatever insecurities they might be dealing with, because obviously society has prioritized a certain look right? A Eurocentric look. So just, I think it's an amazing, just little group, a little club where I have Latina girls, I have African girls, I have African American girls. I wish I had more African American girls, actually. Yeah, it's just, and I think me being the how do I say it, like, the leader of the club, and them seeing, like, you know, she's proud of who she is.
Yeah.
And they see kind of like a role model in that sense. So, you know, whenever I come with my hair out, I'll be like, Miss Figueroa, I love your hair, I'm gonna do it just like that tomorrow. Or how did you do this to your hair? And, you know, and I've created like a bond, like a motherly bond with those girls and stuff like that. So I think I want to continue to do that. Hopefully Corona would allow us to go back to school soon, maybe
Hopefully.
in September. Yeah, I want to continue to have a program like that. Maybe God willing, a nonprofit where I could expand that to other schools, or who knows. You know, I would love to do something greater. It's called Lovely Roots.
That's so amazing.
Thank you.
I love the fact that you started something where you could kind of like put your hands on it, if that makes sense. Like you started something like close to you, you know what I mean? Like you already have access to these kids. You already have access to
exactly,
kind of like, you know what I mean? Being an inspiration for them. And you were like, you know what? I'm just going to start it here where the impact will be felt.
Thank you so much. And no, I would definitely love for it to grow, because it's like, it's crazy. For me, it was like a safe, like it was so rewarding, because the girls really loved the club, and they would just make me so happy. I don't know, it was like every Monday we'll have the club, and like no matter how rough my Monday was, when I'm with those girls, because, you know, it's just I don't know, I loved it, and I really do miss my babies right now. So yeah.
Well, I just want to say thank you so much for meeting with me today. This has been like such a great like opportunity just to talk to you and kind of like hear about how you became as like confident and strong and like proud to be the woman that you are today. I just think that's something that people can definitely benefit from, which is why I wanted to talk to you today. So yeah, thank you for doing my little podcast.
Thank you, Rivka, for even thinking of me.
All right, guys, that's pretty much all I got for you for this episode. Thanks again for tuning into another week of the All Black Matters podcast and listening to the second installment of Culture Convos. Guys, let me know what you guys think about this series. If you like it, if you hate it, whatever you got to say, I want to hear it. You guys know all of my socials and everything is linked in the description. If you don't know already, I have a Instagram, and it's called All Black Matters, All Black Matters Pod. And you could just search that up and DM me, message me, whatever it is, however you want to reach me. It's all of the platforms are there. Also, everywhere that you can listen to the podcast is also linked in the bio of that Instagram account. So, you know, there for you if you need it, when you need it, all that good stuff. Thank you again so much for listening, and don't forget to tune in next week.